Good afternoon. My name is Heather Grant, and I'm the media liaison for the Alberta Teachers Association. Thank you for joining us both here and online today. The Alberta Teachers Association respectfully acknowledges that we are located on Treaty 6 territory, the traveling route, gathering place, and meeting grounds for many Indigenous peoples whose histories, languages, cultures, and traditions continue to influence our vibrant community. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We recognize the land as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on or are visiting. Jason Schilling, president of the Alberta Teachers Association, will provide a statement on the results of the association's Fall 2025 Pulse Research Study. Once he concludes his statement, he'll answer your questions, starting with those who have joined us here in person. If you have a question for President Schilling, we'll get to you in the order in which you raise your hand. For those of you joining us today online, please use the raise hand function at the bottom of your screen under the React tab. We'll call upon you in the order your hands are raised. Everyone will have the opportunity to ask a question and a follow-up question. You'll then have the opportunity to ask any additional questions if you have them. Please state your name and outlet before you ask your question. If there's anything else you need following this availability, please reach out to myself, Heather Grant. At this point, I'd like to welcome ATA President Jason Schilling.
Thank you, Heather, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. It has now been 86 days since the government's decision to invoke the notwithstanding clause and force teachers and school leaders to return to work without addressing the very issues that led to job action in the first place. Forcing teachers to return to the same unsustainable working environments has significantly eroded mental health, morale, and job satisfaction, causing long-term harm to the profession. Today, we are releasing the ATA's most recent study of teachers and school leaders. It reflects the sentiment about the use of the clause and verifies that what teachers have been saying for years. Classrooms are no longer simply larger. They are layered with complex students that have grown exponentially. Across Alberta, teachers and school leaders have spoken. They have sounded the alarm that our public schools are in a crisis, that our classrooms are facing severe levels of complexity. The same conditions this government has repeatedly promised to address, yet year after year have failed to materialize concrete solutions in a meaningful way. Complexity is rising across every grade and every part of the province and in every measure, including social-emotional needs, behavioral challenges, cognitive gaps, and language learning needs. 80% of teachers have reported that students' needs have increased again this year. Consider this. On paper, a grade 4 classroom in Alberta should have 23 to 25 students. In practice and in reality, the learning delays, behavioral challenges, language acquisition needs, and mental health concerns factored in, teachers are managing the equivalent workload of 37 students without additional staff or support. That's because students who require individual supports need up to 50% more teacher assistance and preparation time than typical learners in a classroom. Teachers are managing split grades, multiple course loads, hybrid learning contexts, and increasingly volatile classroom environments. They are juggling the roles of educator, counselor, mediator, safety officer, and crisis responder all at once. And this is not a local issue. It is a direct result of government policy choices, and it is not sustainable. Teachers and school leaders are not asking for sympathy. They're calling for real solutions, including staffing and other resources that match the conditions that they are facing every day. The government cannot continue to pretend that class size and complexity do not matter. The Premier and the Minister of Education must move from statements of concern to measurable action. They cannot continue to rely on the dedication of teachers while failing to give them the tools and support that they need to do their job safely and effectively. The Premier and the Minister have both stated that they've heard teachers' concerns and that they want to rebuild the trust of the profession. Trust, however, is not rebuilt through statements. It is rebuilt through action. Promises without action have consequences, and those consequences are now visible in our classrooms across Alberta. Teachers and school leaders therefore need to see progress that includes restoring teachers' charter rights that were stripped with Bill 2. Transparency by releasing the class size data collected by the school boards in the fall so that Albertans can see the reality of our classrooms. And this data has yet to be released. Immediately fund and target classrooms that have the greatest complexity. We also need a student-teacher ratio with a complexity formula because Alberta students deserve learning environments that meet their needs. Adding more teachers to reduce class size, add educational assistants to support with complexity, adding counselors to schools will help as well to deal with mental health and other issues that students are facing, and include wraparound services such as speech pathologists and physiotherapists. And finally, we need to see a budget in 2026 that has a funding model that does not leave Alberta at the bottom anymore. Alberta teachers and school leaders deserve working conditions that allow them to teach. Alberta families deserve a public education system that is properly funded, properly staffed, and capable of delivering the excellence this province is proud of. Albertans will ultimately judge this government not by what it says about education, but by whether or not it acts to fix the conditions inside of our classrooms, conditions that their failure to fund schools has caused. We expect progress, not promises. And with that, I'm happy to take questions from those who are here.
Sarah Comedina, Global News. The government did make a promise to hire several thousand teachers over the next few years. Have you seen any of those hires come to fruition since the fall?
Well, we asked teachers through this survey if they'd seen an addition of staff, and it indicates that they have not. 86% of teachers within the survey have indicated that no extra staff has been hired at their school, and they did this survey in December. Some, I think 7% within that, and it's on page 58 of the document actually, says that they have seen a decrease of staff at their schools. So government has a far ways to go to add the 1,000 teachers that are required under the legislated settlement.
When it comes to the last year's survey, before the notwithstanding clause was ever invoked, to now, what are some of the differences you're seeing when it comes to morale and that overall feeling of what it's like for teachers to go to work?
The invoking the notwithstanding clause through Bill 2 and ordering teachers back to work into the environments that they were protesting and why they went on strike has caused a huge level of teachers to feel disrespect, to feel demoralized. The survey will indicate in there that they are feeling pessimistic about the future of the profession and are questioning whether or not they want to continue within the profession. So I know the government was saying, well, we need to get teachers and students back to school, but their decision by invoking the notwithstanding clause and stripping away teachers' charter rights has had a demoralizing effect on the profession.
CBC, Nicole Healy. Is there anything in the survey that was found that we haven't already been hearing from teachers?
We've heard this before, and teachers have been talking about this for years. And we're at the point now, what's indicated within the qualitative answers that you hear from teachers. They are tired of listening to government say, we hear your concerns. We've heard your issues. We're going to address those issues. We're going to put together a committee that's going to address these issues, and not seeing anything come from that. And teachers are fed up with waiting. Our students shouldn't have to wait for 6 months to never to get the assessments that they need in order to better diagnose their learning needs. And that's indicated in the survey as well, that students are not getting the assessments that they need in order to be successful at school. And teachers are seeing kids fall through the cracks day in and day out. And this survey really highlights through that the need to address these issues. Time for talk by government is over. We need to see action from them.
Was it just the results that you got from the teachers, or was there any other data or research that was used to measure the level of complexities found in the report?
We used a complexity factor that was in this report that we've used in previous surveys as well. Also compounded with this is the research that came out of TELUS with the OCED last year that indicated that teachers in Alberta are the highest stressed in all the countries that were within that TELUS report and worked the most hours. And so it sort of correlates with what we've been seeing with other research out there.
Miriam with CTV. With these results, have you shown them to the province, and are you sort of hoping that these, facts will really help maybe bolster some more funding, especially with like the budget coming up in the next couple months?
As we do when we do all of these research surveys, we will share this with government. I have sat down many times with the minister with a copy to show him specific areas within the survey that I think he definitely needs to target and see. But like I said before, this is not news to the government. They know this. They know the concerns that teachers have expressed about their classrooms. We just had the largest job action in Alberta history to highlight the fact of what's going on in public education. They can't ignore it anymore. So to sit down and look at this report, more than happy to sit down with government and talk to them about what they need to do. But they need to take the promises that they made in the fall and turn that into action.
And I know a lot of this info isn't necessarily new in terms of, hearing from teachers during the strike, but is there anything that caught you by surprise or anything that was maybe a higher number than you thought?
The part that caught me by surprise, I think, is the section that talks about, and we've seen this as well. So 94%, 95% of teachers feeling stressed and exhausted at the end of every day. The fact that teachers are feeling so demoralized at school every day. But there's one element in there that says that teachers are still finding joy working with their students. And that's the part that we need to capitalize on. That's the part that we need to feed. We need to ensure that we have the supports in our classrooms for our teachers and our students so that the pessimistic level that teachers feel right now decreases, so that the exhaustion and the stress decreases, so that we have the best environment for our teachers to work in so that our students can thrive. And it strikes me that the government cannot see that they cannot see that by making schools the best they can possibly be within this province so that teachers have the tools that they need, students will thrive, that we will have an education system that is better. And government just fails to recognize that.
What for you was the biggest takeaway from the report?
Well, again, I think what we're seeing is teachers are indicating again, the conditions that they saw last year have gotten worse. Their classes are larger, the complexities are larger, the social emotional, the behavioral, the cognitive gaps are larger than they were last year. And this is what prompted teachers to move towards strike action. They took an extraordinary step to draw attention to this, to get this fixed. And government used the notwithstanding clause, the largest tool that they had in their tool chest to order teachers back and not address these issues. It's only going to get worse and the crisis will deepen.
All right, and we're going to move online to the questions there. Jackie, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thank you. Jackie Carmichael with the Edmonton Journal. First of all, can you talk about specifically which numbers in the survey are the most alarming to you?
When you look at the numbers at the beginning, when they talk about the part of the survey of how teachers are feeling about the conditions of their classrooms, those numbers have increased. You're seeing 80% of teachers saying that their class sizes and the conditions have gotten worse since last year. Those are alarming numbers. You look at the numbers that talk about pessimism within the profession. Those are alarming numbers. You go to section 4 of the survey that talks about which government policies are most impacting teachers at schools. 91% will say the invoking of Bill 2, the notwithstanding clause. Then they talk about curriculum. And then they talk about the book bans and other elements that are within the school that they have to deal with day in and day out. So the numbers here are just highlighting the crisis and the fact that it is deepening within this province.
Okay, have you ruled out or are you ruling out further job action?
Well, right now with Bill 2, we're unable to bargain until at least 2028. So the government, through their many press conferences and the telephone town hall that they had with teachers after the strike, indicated, we've heard you. The minister and the premier have said it time and time again. We've heard the concerns of teachers, and we know that we have a complexity problem here within the province, and we're going to address that. And here we are, 86 days later, and nothing has happened. And so we will have to see what government does in terms of their actions, but it will definitely, these issues have been main issues over the last several rounds of bargaining, and if they don't address them, I can imagine that my colleagues will identify this as a key issue moving forward.
But that's 2028 and not before?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your questions. Felix, please go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm Felix from Radio Canada. You mentioned like the morale being low after teachers were forced back to school. Do you have any previous year comparative data that shows that the morale is getting lower? Like, how do you determine that?
The questions that we ask teachers about whether or not they feel stressed or exhausted, pessimistic or hopeful, are questions that we continually ask throughout these pulse surveys. We started doing these pulse surveys during the pandemic in 2020 and have consistently asked these questions to make sure that we have sort of a long-term look at this. And the fact that these numbers are increasing over the last several years, and this year since the notwithstanding clause being imposed on teachers, we've seen that number jump up.
All right. One data that like got my attention in the polls that 49.3% of the teachers considered they reestablish a positive and productive rhythm in class. What do you think about that after the strike? What do you think about that?
It tells you the professionalism of teachers, the fact that they're in schools because they care about kids and they want to see kids be successful. They want to see kids thrive at school. So I know a lot of my colleagues worked hard to reestablish good connections with students post-strike. And that's reflected within this study.
All right, I'm not seeing any more questions online at this time. Do we have any other questions here in the room?
What hope do you have what hope do you have that the government will do the things that you're asking for and make these changes prior to 2028? If you say this is not new information to them.
You know, hope is one of those things that I think I believe that you need to choose. You have to choose hope. So I hope that the government will act on this because the government said that they would. But the government has always given us evidence that they don't. And so the hope is that government acts on this way before 2028. We cannot push this crisis off and kick it down the road any further than it's already been kicked. The time is now for government to act on this. They have a cabinet committee that is looking at issues. They've collected class size data, which they need to release. They've indicated they've got roughly about $400 million sitting waiting to be used to address these issues. The time to act is now. So my hope is that in 2028, when we go to bargaining, that we've addressed the lion's share of these issues that are there, if not all of them, because our students deserve this. Our families deserve this. And the people who are working in schools and making it happen so that kids feel successful and happy deserve this. And we should be holding this government to account in that regard. They said they were going to do these things. Now they need to do them. And if they don't, we hold them to account, and we will continue to do that as an association.
You said since 2020, you've been collecting this data, similar questions. Was there anything that was a drastic increase of like in those percentages that you've seen that we can compare to that's from the top of your head? Or
well, when you look at the 2020 data, and this was really to ask teachers about their experience during the pandemic, because if you recall, teachers and students had to move to an online emergency learning situation. So one of the things that we asked about afterwards specifically was, what were teachers concerned about with their students? The social emotional, the behavioral, the cognitive parts of that were concerns really rose out through those surveys. And we've seen that social emotional behavior cognitive section increase over the course of us doing these surveys in the last several years. Teachers have great concerns about the mental health status of our students. And that is another area, as I indicated in my speech beforehand, that we need to address.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions in the room here or online. I'll just give people a couple more minutes here. Okay, if there aren't any other questions, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for being here today.